John Green from FL Sales in Cleveland, Ohio. John is the foundry guy in our world, and one of the more knowledgeable people in the U.S., possibly the world, in used foundry equipment. And nobody really knows what happens inside a foundry. And people don't think about it like machine tools. There's how many machine tool dealers and people out there that cut metal, but there's so many fewer industries that actually pour metal and do castings. Walk us through the process real quick. How does a foundry work?
Well, it's really relatively simple. You're taking a basically scrap metal or a virgin metal, and that can be anything from iron to steel to aluminum to brass to bronze to kurzite, which is basically lead, any type of metal, and you melt it in a form of furnace, whether it be induction, arc, gas-fired, blast furnace, and then you pour it into a mold of some sort and make a casting. And probably the most recognizable are manhole covers. They're all cast in a foundry. Or an engine block. Engine blocks are all cast in a foundry. Golf club heads are all cast in a foundry. So, those are just three examples of what a foundry does. There are just a lot of different methods to do this. But if you look back, I've done some talks where we've looked at historically. Foundry is one of the oldest industries in the world.
And it just makes me think about my experience in foundries is that they're all dark, they're all dirty, and they're all old. Is that true?
Not at all. If you look at what's called an investment foundry, where they're making the golf clubs, or they're making aerospace parts, you could almost eat off the floors. They're that clean. You have to remember, coins are typically, you melt their jewelry. You're melting gold to form it into a form. That's really a foundry also.
Wow, that's a good point.
Yeah. So realistically, yeah. Most of the iron, steel, the big foundries where they're making automotive parts, they're not the cleanest in the world, but you're dealing with sand and hot metal, and it's tough to keep them clean.
Walk me through the process on how you get from an idea to a finished part. And I know that there's so many nuances to this. If you could generalize how it works, how do you actually get the image in the sand that you then pour your stuff into?
Well, they have modeling software now that will model, and actually in 3D printing also is becoming the new thing, where they're actually printing molds with 3D.
Wow.
This is not for high production. This is for, onesie, twosies type of scenarios. But, you have machines that'll make one mold an hour. You have machines that'll make 500 to 2,000, 500 molds an hour, but in each mold is what they call, they have multiple parts in it. So you might have 5 or 10 parts in that one mold. So these are making 2,500 to 3,000 pieces per hour, mostly automotive high production foundries.
Is it always sand?
No, sand is probably the oldest. Basically in a foundry, it's sand, water, and clay. And what you do is you mix the three into certain proportions, and then you press it together, which will form, a mold with a pattern in it that does an impression on what they call the cup is the top and the bottom is the drag. Then you put those two together, and then you pour your molten metal into it. That's the basis of foundries, sand.
And it seems so simple when you explain it that way, and it really isn't, is it?
It is and it isn't. There's a lot of things that go into making a mold. You have to look at venting. You have to look at permeability. You have to look at gas escape. Because obviously you're pouring this metal into a void, and it, when you pour it in, there's impurities you have to get rid of. You have gas that goes through the sand. It has to be a certain amount of pressure on the sand where the gas will stay in and create holes in your casting. So there's a lot of variables involved in this, and it takes a lot of testing, if you will, in order to get it right.
So a weekend warrior might have a Bridgeport mill in their garage and they might turn parts and do some fun projects. You ever seen anybody with a home foundry before other than in the jewelry space?
On YouTube, you can see them. They're very, very primitive. Let's just put it that way.
John Green, FL Sales, Cleveland, Ohio. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.